Hello, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, even depending where you are in this wonderful world today. Well, I welcome you to another LinkedIn Live lunch session of the EUDF. And today with the topic of how to create self-managed organizations with participative org design. So the title already promises that this is going to be an exciting one. And I have no other than Joan Hinterauer joining me today in this conversation. Hello, Joan. Welcome.
Hi, Tina.
Joan is joining us from a town outside of Salzburg in Austria. And Johan is the co-founder of the Adaptive Org, but has a very interesting journey how he got there and what the Adaptive Org is and everything. So I would like to invite you, Johan, to just say a couple of words about yourself before we are diving into the topic.
Yeah, thanks, Tina, and thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here. And yes, first of all, I have to correct you a little bit. It's not a town; it's really a small village with a small mountain in front of us. From Austria. So who am I? I'm Johan. I'm in Austria. I've always been to Austria, and for 15 years, I used to be a typical employee. In 2015. I ended up as a general manager in a medium-sized company, but even becoming C-level didn't help me to solve the problems I had with this hierarchical system. So I decided to quit, and then something really strange happened because I can't remember that I ordered a book at Amazon called Reinventing Organization. So it really was like, oh, they sent me a book. Okay, let's read it. And I read it within 24 hours. And this was a life changer, a real game changer in my life. And from that moment on, I just was keen on creating this kind of organizations. Frederic Laloux is writing off and telling the story stuff. So that's where I'm coming from, very brief.
Very nice. Thank you so much. Well, and I mean, you found your passion in designing organizations that are maximal adaptive. And one part in this is the participatory org design, organization design. So I would like to ask you, what is for you participatory org design, or how would you define it?
Yeah. What is it? So I say, when we go for transformation, especially for self-management transformation or self-organizing, whatever you want to call it, we tend to focus on the what. Means, okay, do we have a circle design afterwards, or are we using method A or framework B? So this is what we focus on. But what I learned over the years is that actually we should focus more on how we do the transformation. And if we do the transformation already in a self-managed, in a self-organized way, then the output automatically is a kind of self-managed organization. But this organization does not necessarily have to have circles or this kind of stuff, So this is my learning over the almost 9 years now, that it's not about the what. We should focus more on how we come there, and already with the how we transport the self-management mental models and all this kind of what comes with it.
So we very quickly dove into the topic now. It's very nice. So I mean, you already talk a little bit about like the mental model. You talk about there's maybe even a certain belief behind that helps us design organizations, and there's a reason also why you got to that point, as you said yourself, like you have like a decade of experience in designing organizations, and before that being part of them yourself, right? So maybe to make it not too, so I don't want to jump like from the one to the other too much now, but to get like a good entry point, could be maybe to go into a practical case, even like how did you get in touch, or how did you try out participatory org design in the first place, and what are for you like the like, let's say, the principles or the characteristics of it that really help to design an organization that is in consequence then adaptive.
Yeah, actually, I got there after I read the book, Reinventing Organizations. You know, a lot of people in this environment have read it anyways, so they know at the end of the book, Frederic Laloux says kind of okay, holacracy is a framework with which organizations can become a story like we read in this book. And so I believed him because I was coming actually from a very different industry and profession, and I say, okay, then let's go for holacracy, and that's what I did. And I went to Vienna, and afterwards to Amsterdam to the coach training. And yeah, and it came that or it happened that in Amsterdam I met my first customer coming back to Austria, and this organization was just a 30 minutes drive from my home, so a coincidence, like always. And then we started the transformation, and the founder was very well. He was very enthusiastic, and he wanted to do that, and we started it. And like you learn in holacracy or with a lot of other frameworks as well, you do implement it. Okay, so you come, you actually, the decision is more or less taken from the owner of the organization or from some kind of top level, and then you start to train people, and you implement it. And I'm always say you kind of treat human beings like you would learn a dog to apport. So they have to do it this way. They have to follow this rule and this kind of stuff. So, and what I learned in my first and in my second implementation of holacracy was that, okay, it's not working. Even if the owners were happy, if I talked between the lines to the people, when they were running the gangway and you had this informal conversations, people would say, okay, listen, we do that because the owner wants it. We play it like a game, but the real business, the value for the organization, we create between the meetings and outside of this new implemented system. And this made me think, okay, and then we continued for a couple of weeks and months, but it didn't improve very much. And then I said, okay, to the owner, I'm not going to continue. Because the situation we have right now is it's really old world. We have a lot of bureaucracy. The people have to follow rules, and they don't accept it. And we want to force them. Yeah, where is the self-management? Where is self-organizing? Where is self-determination in this transformation case? And that was quite challenging for me, because I, as an independent consultant, I built everything on this holacracy thing. So I killed my business model. I can tell you, after 1.5 years, this is quite challenging in terms of income and stuff like that. But I think from today's point of view, it was the quite best decision I could take back then. Because with the questions in mind, why holacracy, why didn't it work, why did this implementation not work, and all these questions in mind, I met a guy called Gebhard Borg. He's a German guy, and he used to experiment in the field of self management for already 10 years when I met him first. And at that point, he was the only person who could respond to my questions, so that I said, okay, this sounds reasonable. And from that moment on, we joined forces, and he just came from his first transformation case, which was quite successful. And then we said, okay, let's analyze what went good and try to abstract a kind of a repeatable approach. And that's what we started, I'd say, 8 years ago from now. And the result is what we call adaptive org today. And yet, what we are doing very, very differently is that we do not implement anything. Okay, everything we do when we join organizations is we invite people, and if the people follow the invitation, then we solve problems in a different way. That's what I meant at the beginning of this conversation when I said we try to change the how of problem solving. And that's what we actually do. And this how is what we design, okay? As organizational and design consultants at what we call the role catalyst. It's an adaptive org catalyst. And it's actually our profession it's our task to design this problem solving contexts, problem solving processes, environments. Yes, exactly. So and it's always designed around a concrete problem. You know, it never looks the same. So we always design this space around the concrete problem, but we do not make org design. So that we are not doing this. But in this space, in this context, the people are doing it. The people who are affected by the results of the process, they are doing the org design. So this is how we do it, and this is how we really made very, very good experiences.
It's really interesting. You said a couple of things. I just want to sum up because you said one thing when you made your experience with holacracy and other models that oftentimes it was really implementing something, and it had somewhat like a disconnect to the actual business. So it was like there was a transformation going on, but it happened in like a parallel universe, which is very interesting. So kind of like solving that. And on the other hand, I would like to ask you a question about, because you said, so you analyzed cases and you went in there and you said, okay, you know, there's a couple of things we can potentially repeat in other cases. So would you say you were really looking for a blueprint, or was it more like you looked for different kind of tools and stuff like you could use in different kind of in organizations, other social systems? Like, is it even possible to find a blueprint? I think that's what I wanted to say. Is it possible to find a blueprint, say this is the model we are using and this is just going to work for every organization?
Yeah, exactly. And I can say no. So we start with your last question. No, there is no blueprint. It's not possible, because if we sit back and bring some distance between us and organizations, and we observe, what we see there is that organizations they're very, very complex constructions. You know, you have the people. Every individual is complex in itself, and then you have your business model, and you have other things influencing organizations. Yeah, and how? Just imagine that you invent something. You just would have to implement, and it's fitting every business model, every culture, every industry. No, it's simply not possible. And as I came from this, I'd say a holacracy fail, I already knew, okay, implementing something like a blueprint does not really work. So this was, and I'm very thankful for that. That my first experience was exactly that, because it pushed me towards developing something more. And then, okay, when you analyze and see, okay, we have pioneers from different industries and stuff like that, and those pioneers, they have in common that they found their own way. Okay, those pioneers, they don't implemented something, but they had an idea in mind. Okay, we want to become self-organized, and then they found whatever they needed to build their organization. But instead of trying to use the pieces in terms of practices, we said, okay, why don't we do something different? And that's actually why the adaptive org is not a blueprint. It's a kind of a reflection journey. What we have developed is, we call that mental tools, and those mental tools, all they do is they don't say whether this is right or this is wrong, but they help you in reflecting your own self-management transformation journey. And this is very different. It's just like a mirror. Okay, and the mirror, you stand in front of the mirror, and then you talk to the mirror. Okay, was this practice, for example, what we were looking for? Is it solving the problem we addressed originally? And it's kind of this working style, not implementing something, but reflecting. The entire journey is a reflection journey. And by doing so, you get usually exactly the organizational model, the organizational design that fits to your business model and to your culture in the organization. And then I stop. And that's very important. This does not necessarily mean that you don't have a hierarchical organizational chart anymore. Okay, so some of our clients still have that, but it has just very, very low impact on people's daily business.
Yeah. So I think we also just had a question. Yeah, here it is. So how do you get them to, how do you get the teams to think less about a hierarchical structure that they're comfortable with versus a more adaptive way of working and structuring?
So yes, how do we get them there? It's as I already mentioned, it's invitation based. So what we offer on the operational level of an transformation is something that we call activation process. An activation process is something you apply as soon as the problem is bigger than just one team, or to put it in other words, a cross-organizational problem. Okay, a problem that somehow goes around in the organization, like there is a broken process or something. And this broken process has impact on, for example, 4 teams. Okay, so and then because the problem, who has the problem? So that's the first question. Actually, the people in the process have the problem because they are struggling to deliver value to the customer or to other parts of the organization. Yeah, and then we say, okay, if you want, if we're searching for a active minority, and if we find within the group of affected people, if we find there an active minority who wants to work on this problem, then we start an activation process. And the activation process itself is invitation based, means, okay, we never force the people. Okay, and if the people don't join or if they don't accept the proposal of starting this activation process, okay, it's very simple. Then we don't start something, and then the people remain sitting there with their problems. And sooner or later, they come back and say, okay, listen, we still have the problems. Can't we start with the process? And this is how we do it. And if the people don't follow the invitation, then the transformation is not happening. And this is very important. This is also something we mirror back to our clients, saying, okay, listen, you have to do the transformation. If you people are not you're not following the invitation to an activation process to solve problem A, problem B, problem C, then you're not gonna go the transformation journey. So it's very simple. So even there, we give back the responsibility to the people. So we are not pushing them, not at any point. And this is very sustainable.
It's very interesting because your role as a consultant is changing here as well, because you're more like then you're going back, you're there, I'm there if you need me, but the rest you're going to do. So what you're doing is you give the power back to people in that sense, right? You involve people early on in identifying the problem, being part of the problem and solving the problem. And this is actually like the result of it is the change of the design. Do I understand that right?
Exactly, yeah. And by every single activation process, the people running the organization, the organizational design is changed. So this is exactly how it happens. And you got it pretty right and pretty on the point, because what is very important with this activation process and with this transformation thing is you have to let the people fall in love already with the problem. Okay, so it's too late. You involving people when everything is actually decided, So people are not stupid at this point. So they smell it. Okay. So if you already have the idea and you just want to sell it, it's not working. Okay. So give them the chance to fall in love with the problem and start with analyzing the problem.
And what is that doing with the resistance curve that we often face in transformation processes?
Yeah. Well, you still have resistance. The difference is with the activation process, you give the people the possibility to work on their resistance, and they are reducing, by doing so, they reduce the resistance themselves. So this is
because
like,
they're part of the problem solving from
yeah,
the beginning on,
exactly.
right? I mean, not just problem solving, but identifying the problem and, like, you know, building that relationship to the problem. And exactly. I know when I recall previous conversations between us, I mean, we have talked a lot back in the days already. Relationship is something vital, right? Relationship that is standing at the forefront. So it's not just a relationship between people, but how people are relating to the problem, how people are relating to the organization, and the entire process of solving the problem, and in the end having this impact as an individual on the organization already, right? So this is interesting. Do you want to say anything about this relationship factor? Because I feel like we talk about it in OrgDesign, but we also not often directly talk about it, you know what I mean? So
yeah. In my perspective, every organization has a social system as well. So people are there. We can't ignore that. And so it's some kind of obvious that relationships are important. So within the adaptive org, one of our mental models is based on a book called Change or Die from Alan Deutschmann. And Alan Deutschmann, he analyzed a couple of, coming from very, very different industries, huge successful transformations. Yeah. And he came, and his conclusion was kind of, okay, you need the three R's in this order to do a successful transformation of a social system. And the first R is relate, in like relationship, and then repeat, and then you reframe. And what we actually see out there today, mostly people start with repeat. So they completely ignore this relationship thing, and they don't let the people relate to the problem. They don't let the people relate to like people who are already representing the new idea of organizing or working, but they immediately start with repeating practices, methods. So that's actually the starting point of most transformation towards agile or self-management today. And the relation thing, the first step is, they just don't do it. And this is exactly where we focus very, very strongly on, is that we give the people the opportunity to relate to the problem. That's what I just said when I meant when I said let the people fall in love with the problem. And another strategy we have is that we kind of train these internal catalysts, and they also and this training is not the focus on of this training is not on practices and method. It's like we build relationship with the catalyst, with the internal catalyst, and the internal catalysts then go back to their organizations and start building relationships with their colleagues. So this is also something we try to establish.
So when you talk about internal catalyst, you mean like internally in organizations, right? Like people going internal organizations. And here you touched it in the beginning. So part of this like training, let's say, are these mental models, right? So you said, well, there is no right and no wrong. That's quite a statement to put out there. So I just want to make the link here, because So we're saying practically that the mental model, or you're saying like the mental model or a certain belief is impacting the organization design and the result, right? So if we have, I don't know what is happening there. Like, can you explain me a little bit what you're doing and what is no right and what is no wrong? Like,
yeah, like actually what is right or not wrong. What we say is that so we as adaptive org people, we bring a mental tool called inner compass. And this inner compass can be filled with mental models. Okay. And which mental models you put into this inner compass, it's really up to you, to the organization. So we bring a set of mental models from which we have the experience that they work quite well in the direction of self-management, self-organizing. Okay, so we bring a set of mental models, but you could also equip this mental tool with other mental models, and then you end up in a very hierarchical situation. So this is what I mean when I say it's not right or wrong. It's really up to the organization to fill this mental tool with the mental models they want. We are, yeah, exactly. As we are big fans of self-management, so we love to introduce our set of mental models, and that's what we usually discuss with the internal catalyst during the training. So we discuss every single of this mental model, but we are not saying, and again, it's kind of the same saying. We are not saying this is right or this is wrong within a mental model. It's just that we suggest something. And an example for a mental model is we talk about Viktor Frankl, and in related to the topic of responsibility and accountability. Okay, and then, other than if you talk about values, yeah, when you write down a value like liberty, and then you ask 100 different people in the organizations, you probably get 100 different answers what their understanding of liberty is. But a mental model like let's stay with Frankl, it's I always describe it, it's like a cloud, you know. It's a cloud you see on the sky, and Frankl had made some statements in there, and if we want to talk about it, we both stand on the earth. It's far away. It's a cloud. It's not completely clear. And then we start discussing what meant Frankl when he said this or that. And you see, instead of saying this is right or this is wrong, we try to ignite a dialogue, a discussion, you know?
Exactly. So it's like more a stimulator for entering a dialogue, and with that, then having people relate to each other and the direction they want to go, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And this mental models, they help to clear the relationship, and it's also you can kind of influence your culture with it, because Frankl, and then we discuss what he meant when he was saying A or B or something like that. Yeah, this is how we do it, and this is what proposed to the people in the organization at the first step to the catalyst when we do the training, and they can keep on going with the mental models if they want. But usually, to be honest, it's not required because the catalyst represent those mental models, and that's, well, it's usually enough. Yeah, so you don't need these discussions within the organization, but you could do it if you want.
Yeah, it's I resonate with it as well. Like, I mean, if you believe people are, for example, they are good at the core. If we look at the book Humankind by Rutger Bregman, for example, then you bring this kind of energy into the room, right? So you look at each other in a different way. And some other people might just say, okay, I don't know, respect is the value and that's it, which is there is a lot of interpretation around it. So if you give people the space to actually like reflect with, you know, the stimulation of literature, research, or, you know, methodology, philosophy on certain things, then you have a complete different kind of conversation around something. Very interesting. So I know you have done successful transformations, like you have transformed organizations into adaptive orgs. And maybe also we maybe also need to say, because adaptive org is more like used as also a broader expression, right? Because it is not just like this one specific framework, let's say, but it's very open, because you can bring in whatever tools, or, you know, fill this kind of system with whatever you think fits for you. So when you, I don't know, maybe you want to just pick an example of a transformation you have done, and how that turned out, and what were the visible changes, what was the problem in the beginning, and what kind of tools were used to realize this kind of transformation. Maybe also in what kind of time frame, and when you could see the first real changes happening.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think so. We have one superstar client called Teledata IT. They're in the great area of Stuttgart, around 70 employees, and yeah, their transformation journey ended like, or actually it doesn't end. You know, it's just, but the intensive time where we helped them, I think, was 14 months. But I think we also have to look into the details of the 14 months, because 14 months meant that we didn't work every week 4 days with them. It in average, it means that they have probably 2 consultant days per week within this time frame. Okay, then you can, let's say we're talking about 70 weeks by 2 days, so we were something about of roughly 140 consulting days. And after that, they were really capable of designing and applying complicated activation processes by themselves without our support. And complicated means like involving the entire organization. An activation process where you invite 70 people and 30 are coming, and you have to work with 30 people, a large group, and bring this group towards a result. So this is actually what is one example. And just to get an idea what they are doing today is like when they came back from Corona. And a lot of corporates still have these discussions ongoing in terms of home office rules. Yeah. And at Teledata, it was quite simple. Okay, the first people started coming back to the office, and they recognized that this is a problem. If half of the team is not in the office and the other team goes to the office, and then people said, okay, we need to solve that, and came up with an activation process. And as a result, they have a kind of rule set for themselves. And this is so interesting, because, you know, the manager in all these corporates, they are struggling because they actually don't want to force the people, but they find no other way to bring the people back to the office. And so it's a back and forward discussion. And they were just doing it out of themselves. The employees did that, and there was the owner, the managers. No, they did nothing. They were just observing and were just wondering, okay, that's great. So we don't have to touch this sensible topic, because they feel the need to solve this problem anyway. This is a typical example.
You mentioned one thing which is interesting, because you said, the managers just practically laid back and watched and observed. Yeah. So what you're saying is the adaptive org is not necessarily like cutting out management or C-level people, right? Like, so maybe we can go a little into that as well, because maybe that is also like one of the myths, that when we talk about self-managed organizations, that it's completely flat and you know, the hierarchy is out of the window. But what does that mean?
what we see is, and let's stick with the example of Teledata. The two owners, for example, and this was one of their major motivation to start the transformation. They used to work 65 to 75 hours per week, and every minute they were in their office, people would knock on the door and ask, "Oh, am I allowed to order a blue pencil?" Or okay, can I send this email to customer A? And this was their daily business, and it went them crazy. People were asking for every single action they would do, and so they decided, okay, we're not going to continue this. We tried to find a transformation solution, and then they found us. And what happened is that their workload was somewhere, I think, after 1.5 years, it went down to 35 hours per week. So they for a certain time, they even worked less than the average employee. And then we said, in a reflection meeting, we talked to them, and they were so happy. And then we said, okay, listen, guys, you own this company, so maybe you engage a little bit more as a catalyst, so that you go back to the 40 hours like all the others work. And that's where they are today. But 40 hours relaxed, because they can rely on the people, and people are not coming anymore asking stupid questions. So this is actually what happens. But we also see in Teledata that they still, for example, have team leads. Okay, so all we are saying is, when we come with the adaptive organization, and it gets more mature, and they have done more and more activation processes, is that a team can decide to not listen to a manager. So this is actually what we are saying. So if the manager says nonsense and the team believes it's nonsense, then they do not have to follow what he or she is saying. So this is actually what we introduce sooner or later. But this can also mean that the team leads remain, because they are doing some valuable work for the team, like coordinating with other teams in the organization. But at the end of the day, the team has the liberty to just ignore orders from the manager. And this sometimes leads to the moment where the manager say, okay, then I step back and be I also want to be just a normal employee, or a very, very small percentage is leaving, but it's very, very small. So don't believe horror stories like 20% of the people are leaving, or 60% of the managers. So we don't see that. We cannot confirm that. So it's either like, okay, one person here, maybe a second one here, and after 3 years, a third one or so. But new people are coming in as well. So I think that's quite normal at this point. And yes, but we don't force organizations to change their organizational chart. And again, if we talk about Teledata, it was like in in our contract, there was a package included saying that we the consultants, we have to come up with a new organizational chart together with the workforce. So this was actually a package of our contract, but we never did that, because the two owners recognized it's not they don't need it. Okay, they simply didn't need it. And so we say, okay, we can do that now, but actually there is no problem we would solve by implementing a new organizational chart. And then they said, okay, yeah, you're totally right. We have no problem today. In case this is changing, we still can do it later, but then we let it go for now. And we never did it. And now they have teams. They call it, it's kind of it's not very clear. They don't have a chart or something like that. They know that people belong to teams, but they can switch teams anytime they want, and that's it. Yeah.
It's very interesting. I would like to open it up, also like to encourage our audience to ask some questions while I'm doing a little bit of a recap of what we've already discussed. Like in the beginning, we started out with okay, let's not focus too much on the what we have been doing a lot, like the outcome. This is how the outcome is supposed to be looking like. This is why we're doing this and this and this. But we rather go on the how, like we are changing from the beginning on practically like the process of how we are solving problems, because that makes it easier for people to engage with the problem from the beginning on. That also helps to bring the resistance curve actually a little bit more down, because people are more engaged and more involved and fall in love with the problem, as you said. So go with like relate, repeat, reframe, and repeat is usually what we're focusing on as well, and leaving relate practically out. Then what that also kind of like crosses out, there is no implementation. You don't have like this framework that you want to put on this organization like a cookie cutter, right? Like cutting out what might be valuable practically, but giving people tools at hand to co-create their own environment, in that environment where they will be, do their problem solving, and with that actually changing the design from day one on. And what helps here is the relating also via the mental models, which makes it easier for people to relate with each other and the problem, and then go from there. Invitation-based was a thing you also stressed, right? Which is important. And what I also like is, because we talk about, okay, we've done this transformation, but the transformation never ends. You said it, right? There's always like this transformation, it's ongoing. And in this case, you go in, you help people to actually set up to be able to do that themselves. So you are not needed. You make yourself obsolete, which might, sound a little counteracting in that sense. But that's what makes these organizations successful. Super interesting. And Joan, I'm also really happy that you will be hosting a problem-solving session with the adaptive org approach on the 25th of June at 5 PM CET. So people can actually sign up on our platform to be there. Then they get a Zoom link, and I think it's going to be a really great session. And I would see, like, are there any more questions from our audience? I don't think it looks like it. So maybe they're going to ask you questions afterwards. Joan is one of our newest members at the EUDF as well. So everybody can find you on the platform. Welcome again to that, by the way.
Thank you.
And is there anything else you would like to share, Joan?
Yeah, just as a kind of closing words, for me, it's very important that even if I criticize typical frameworks or methods, it's not either or. So this is very important to me. I'm speaking out of the perspective of the adaptive organizations, but the adaptive organization needs methods and tools and practices. And I think it's very important that that people don't see it as a kind of competition. It's a complementary thing, And I just have seen it. If you combine it, it can be. Yeah, it can make transformations beautiful. This is how I would put it. And yes, I'm very much looking forward to the problem-solving session next week. Thank you.
In 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, right?
In 2 weeks. It's still 2 weeks.
The 25th. We have the 12th today, so we still have some time.
Yeah.
No, but it's nice that you say that. Yesterday in the conversation with Lissy and Pietro, we also came to this conclusion. Like, there's not one approach to every organization. There's different kind of, practices we can tap into and even combine and integrate to just take what works, practically what works for this individual social system that we are working with. So, thank you so much, Joan. It's been a great conversation. I love talking to you. And I think I have a lot of things still on my list I would have liked to address, but I think we gave like a good insights on what you're doing and how you are advancing the field of org design. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And